And thanks to everyone for coming and the people joining us online. Here's the roadmap for this evening. We will have 2 poets, then we'll take a short break with some refreshments, and then 2 more poets after that to finish off. Thanks so much, everyone, for coming out. Our first poet this evening is Irene Naested, and she was awarded institutional and national teaching and research recognition, achieving full professor and professor emerita in 2015 from Mount Royal University. Irene has published and exhibited her visual art and writing locally, nationally, and internationally. Her most recent books of her poetry, prose, and visual art are Light as It Falls and Art Making, A Companion in Solitude. On leaving academia and her re-careering, poetic inquiry has become a recognized method of documenting research in the humanities. Irene is developing a collection of her work on narrative inquiry through word and image, and she will tell us all about it. We can also take in this. So please welcome Irene.
Thank you. I was expecting to be on the last because of alphabetical order, but anyway, so you're going to get a sampling of me and my life. This summer I'm turning 75. I've been teaching for 50 years, and so I have a collection of things I'd like to share with you. I hope I live long enough to pull it all together. Anyway, thank you to Single Onion and Shelf Life Books for this opportunity. I'm truly honored. All the creative arts are narratives on what the artist, writer, visual artist, musician, dancer sees, feels, hears, smells, imagines, and reinterprets. Instrumental music carries the listener on a path. Lyrics, drama, dance, storytelling, images, pictures, artifacts, poems, prose, novels, myths, tales, fables are all narratives. Creating empowers the artist, and the artist meaning all of us, to feel in control, to create something that did not exist before, to demonstrate I was here. I just looked at, I Googled and I was here, and Beyonce has a song about it. So pages are out of order. I timed this so I would be right on my 15 minutes of film. I'd like to share with you first a poem that I wrote. 10 of my cohort doctoral students in 1991 decided we write a book on our thoughts on teaching and learning, and this is what we came up with. And I started my chapter on a poem, and the chapter is about the importance of the arts in schools. It's actually a takeoff of Corinthians. Must have been from my childhood experience with Bible studies. I'm now an atheist. So my chapter is called Towards Forgotten Thoughtfulness. When I was a child, I played as a child. When I became a student, I was encouraged to put away my childish ways and decipher meaning from the world through word and number. When I became a teacher, I rediscovered the values of play and other ways to experience and learn. So that's basically my philosophy of teaching. My last book I wrote when I was at Mount Royal was exploring the art and math connection. And I felt a need to do that because many artists don't feel that they are good at math, but they are. Artists understand, and again, the artist is all of the arts. Artists understand about estimation, proportion, perspective, balance, symmetry, distortion, golden section triangles, spirals, Fibonacci sequences of the 3, 5, 7, and so on. And so in the book are chapters on math in the human body, math in the flora, fauna, etc. So it's everything that the artists know about, but haven't put numbers to it. For example, the daisy has petals that are odd numbers. In fact, almost all flowers do have odd numbers. Therefore, when you try to pick your petals, he loves me not, he loves me. Oh, I know. The clover has 3 leaves, therefore the song. I'm overlooking a 4-leaf clover that I overlooked before. So, as I said, artists know about these things. Artists, through observation, understand many things in their environment, which is essential to reinterpreting this understanding in word, image, movement, gesture, and sound. And I find this information in my research has inspired my writing. I've done several things since I re-careered. I don't use the word retired because this was my opportunity to carry on into a different career, which is highly difficult. When people say, well, it must be nice being retired. I'm not retired. It's actually a hard job, really hard. Anyway, I was fortunate enough to theme teach a course with Vivian Hansen. And I've always been intrigued with skies and clouds. So we did a art and writing course from Alexander Writing Center. And so all of the students, there was 15 in my studio. You must come and see my studio. It's wonderful, overlooking the city. You can see it online too in my website. We all painted the skies and then wrote about it. And I wrote you one of mine. The lonely road home, driving down empty road toward flat horizon, meeting white clouds, streaking cool blue sky. No other in sight, landscape golden, fresh cut hay, crisp morning breeze. Clouds in no hurry, unlike me, to reach my destination. I've always been interested in the prairie landscape. I was brought up in Manitoba, and it's a lovely place, almost as lovely as Calgary. So I've written about seasons and snow fences, and some of my writing, prose and poetry and art was accepted by Still Point. So I've got some art in here, and I'll just read you one little section. I imagined this scene, this moment, so many times. The time of change, the time of aging, or is it decay? A time in the year, a season of no more growth. The daylight hours become fewer. What if I opened a fortune cookie and found a map that led me home to the time when I was a happy, optimistic young girl? That's a sampling of that one. And then a call was from Still Point that they were looking for art and writing, poetry on freedom. In 1941, Franklin Roosevelt spoke on freedom, freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedom of want, freedom of fear. In 1943, in the Saturday Evening Post, Norman Rockwell published 4 paintings on this topic. I emailed them and asked them if they'd consider something on freedom of gender equality. So this is where I did a series of these. They accepted 2 of them and a poem. This is a combination of many techniques: silk screen, printing, monoprinting, stencil. Just for those who are interested. So I call this my birthday. To begin, there is nothing, a markless paper. Everything depends on my memory and my pen strokes. Smooth blankets of cool blue air move waves of darkness from my recollection. In the intolerable prairie heat, the man found the bleak, sprawling sandstone without difficulty. He had been there many times before. Parks his hot, shiny new Cadillac with angular fins in the first available stall. Strolls tall and silent in the high noon sun. Tailored suit fit well, broad shoulders, trim waist. His strong, sweaty hands open the massive double doors. Waves of antiseptic and anesthetic, high polish of his black lace shoes, clicks echo down the sterile linoleum. The dimly lit, sickly green hallway. He stealthily steps into a claustrophobic space. It's a girl. Another girl, the man replies. Mother stretch. I get personal about this. Burden arms towards him, a small bundle of perfect baby girl. Swaddled in sweet smelling blankets, motherly eyes glistening with pride, then sorrow, noting his disappointment. He quietly comments, still not able to add to the company name, still not a son. With a halting raised hand, he moves to the exit. Must go. Business is waiting. Maybe next time, a son. I'd also like to share with you some of the stuff that I've done with, not just one piece, done with David Martin and his musical group, the Fragments. You can see some of their work on my website. I have videos, YouTubes, and it's been lovely working with David and his lyrics because they are truly narratives. This is Flemmer, which is walking at night. On your own. Anyway, I did a whole series of these. And my website is irenenaested.com. And I have cards here. In 2020, in the height of the shutdown, I decided to pull some of my stuff together. And I wrote this book, Light as It Falls, and it has my poetry, prose, and artwork. And it's about the need for writers and artists to have balance. Without balance in your work, you need the dark and light. It can't all be the bright side, you might say. So I have a number of these on themes on black and white and gray. Just another note, my parents were undertakers. We lived above the funeral home, which is a whole different experience, which I've written about. Anyway, my father felt like he was a would-be artist. One time he made a nose on a corpse out of wax because it was amputated. And he prided himself on that. Another day, he called us downstairs and I've got something to show you. And it was a little casket. And I call this white. I actually have this in color as well. I actually printed this in black and white because that was what the theme of the book is. Little white coffin, mother cries. Father lets it tear. Gone to a better place. God has a plan. Fly with the angels. Among the clouds, perfect baby dressed in white. And a number of my poems and prose are dealing with the natural environment. And this is Breaking Membrane. With warmth and water, seeds, stiff membrane, break, triggering change, creating the new. To achieve its greatest expression, the spring sown seed must come completely undone. If you ever experienced change, that's important. The pandemic wasn't over yet, so I wrote another book, which I'd been working on different ideas for it. Art Making a Companion in Solitude. And it's the need for artists to create in solitude, to have a room of their own. Virginia Woolf said every woman needs a room of her own. And in her time, women were not allowed their own room. And so she created her own room once she sold, when she had money for her, from her writings. So this is a book, and I write letters to my companion in art making. It's meant to encourage, stimulate thoughts and ideas about writing and poetry, to capture you. And it's not one that you go in order. It's you can flip through the book. And so I'm going to read you just a couple on my idea on the narrator and the folklorist. And I call it Home Road. Many communities have named streets Home Road. The Home Road, for home owners, the journey one takes to leave or return home, the mortal, moral, or religious road, the last road taken on earth towards death, heaven or hell. In the community of Bowness, there is a home road, and the folklore connected to that is that the road that goes up a hill, and apparently at the top of the hill was a crematorium. And so I painted about it, and I wrote about it. Last journey, black attired bearers, solemn upward trudge, ashes to ashes, my last road home. And then I wrote a book about casket. I am thinking about my mortality, I suppose. And I call it the coffin. Light wood, soft cloth lining, internment ready. Tight shroud, secured back, bare arms and body cover. No footwear needed, going nowhere. Legs no longer carry. Death toxin swollen feet, shoes no longer fit, no wish to travel. Roof bell hung, disabled hands, no escape ring, forever silent. On that note, thank you.
So much, Irene.
Yes.
And you were mentioning that if people go to your website, they can find
Or email me.
or email you. They can find your books. So that's a great way to do that. And yeah, my band, The Fragments, was really excited to work with Irene and the other artists. We would send them our songs and our lyrics, and they would sort of reinterpret them visually. And it was really fascinating to see another artistic perspective on what we were doing as musicians. So that was really exciting for us.
It was really challenging as visual artists too. I mean, it's excitingly challenging.
Okay, so our second poet this evening is Ian Fitzgerald. His professional background in advertising led to teaching at Alberta University of the Arts in Calgary. He has trifled with poetry since teenage years and is getting dangerously close to thinking that he should take it seriously. Maybe. He's quite keen on poetry and hopes one day that it will be requited. His poem Decibels was published in We Are One, Poems from the Pandemic, sounding in subterranean blue poetry, through a certain mirror, framed and amp, familiar, 101 portraits, eardrums, Freefall magazine, as well as 2 slogan poems accepted for publication in the Journal of Customer Behavior from the UK. So please welcome Ian.
Thank you, Fingal Onion. Thank you, Self-Life Books. Thanks all of you for coming out tonight. As David mentioned in the introduction, I spent a lot of years in advertising, and while I was working in advertising, one of the things that always really intrigued me was the slogans, the catchy phrases that are incredibly sticky. And so I got this idea that I would write a series of poems, all based on those slogans. And so that's what I have done. I haven't finished them. There's going to be plenty, and it's going to be a book, and it's going to be a bestseller.
But you won't get rich on it.
Sounds like a challenge. No, I won't get rich, but nor will I lose money. So yeah, I hope to turn this into a good-sized collection. And just in case anybody doesn't know all of the subject matter, I have brought some props. Anybody like candy? M&M's melts in your mouth, not in your hand. Mouth me the words, impolite to speak in the carpet dark room, seats rising to a point of light opposite the silver screen that fills one entire wall. In my lap, a bag of hard-shelled candy crinkles. You shush me. I go quiet. On the screen, wars on stars, maybe Mars. Heroes fight, fall, fight again, against other colored bad guys. Always look like Nazis. Dark, disciplined. We sit, eyes wide as meteors. In the bag, the other colored candy. Greens, yellows, oranges, blues, and browns. Push to the top, eager for my saliva. Take off your coat. Stay a while. Red pill melting on my tongue. Credits climb the screen. You're already gone. My hands are clean. I'm left to let it settle in an empty, silent darkness. Okay, we've had our chocolate fix. Now, maybe we need a little extra energy. Red Bull gives you wings. Jacked on bootleg Jolt Cola, an Austrian typographer's right middle finger lingered too long in the I key, and autocorrect, whose job it was, didn't catch it in time. On it sailed, okayed by proofer after proofer, each either misstating it or presuming it an on-purpose boo-boo. A keener climber called Klaus, fresh from an online MBA, claimed it. The whole idea behind Red Bull is extra energy, extra lift. So why not an extra I or two? gives you wings. Don't you see? The boardroom took a sip. A nod from the brass. And a glug, glug, glug. Stamp, stamp, approved. Close leads a kick line of bobblehead execs. Cha, cha, ba, ba. Enough of that. Let's have something else to drink. Great taste, less filling. Was it even about beer? Or Miller Lite tutting America over consumption? Solitary sardine, spooning cilantro, pin drop of aioli. Or world's biggest source of natural gas, bellying up to a bottomless buffet. Slender volume, pounds short poems, minimalist magazine space. Or My Way memoirs from mercantile faith healers, Woolworth, Walton, Bezos, unwrapped, stacked, uncracked. $8,000 microcarbon bicycle, tires plumped with holier than. Or jam-packed minivan groaning home from Costco. Judicious choices on balance, less is more. Or buy more, feel better. Retail therapy actually does feel good. Shun stuff, Puritan brothers. Nix acquisition, and thou shalt see the light. Fuck that, thirsty peasants. Just drink more beer. Okay, we're still in the beverage mode. Maybe moving a little more into the health area. Wow. It sure doesn't taste like tomato juice. Of course not. It tastes like V8. I drink a large engine, Detroit growl and all. Jawbone pried open like a snake's. My esophagus a choke. I down every cubic inch, gulp or gulp or gulp, gagging on the valves, all 8 cylinders, 8 hot spark plugs, finally ingest, fuel inject. A whole V8, big honkin' block, knocked back, pistons churn, stomach grumbles like a muscle car at a red light. V is for vegetable. V is for velocity. V is for virility. V is for vanquish. Drag race, edge of town, street racers wine, revving and sipping energy drinks, maybe V8. Viscous and sweet breakfast drink for slow starters. Sid Vicious once said, only tomato juice really tastes like her. Vichyssoise ain't got nothing on the unique umami of a Buick Nailhead 401. Horsepower tastes like V8. Great. Okay, we've had it with the beverages. Now we will move into more of the hard stuff, the solid stuff, let's see, with Harvey's. Harvey's makes a hamburger a beautiful thing. Who can even say flame broiled without feeling tricked? Burger and beautiful are not 2 terms that fall naturally onto the same particular plate. Picking pickles, peppers, relish, tomato, mustard, mayonnaise, onions, lettuce, and maybe a special sauce is not the same as buying eyeliner, mascara, moisturizer, lipstick, lip balm, lip gloss, perfume, powder, and blush, and elegant dolls in trim white coats, sashaying and smiling and smelling so fine. Makeup made fresh. Conduits are cosmetics. Before getting dressed, it's pretty darn plain. Damp, gray disc lounging on brown, white bun. Before I chow down, my eyes do not behold. I chew. I consider the cow, momentarily, and periodically wipe my burger-full mouth, my beautiful chin. Okay. This is a long ago slogan that I've never been able to shake. Aren't you glad you use dial? Don't you wish everybody did? In a summer's peak heat, I sometimes sleep with one arm hooked overhead, the other curving an S on my belly. Turn my nose and there it is, my signature scent. Your own special whiff can be sniffed out without a bloodhound's help. Fingerprint, scar, or nervous tick, birthmark that smells. And not just from under the arms. It emanates from every body intersection or orifice. After a bender, it seeps an olfactory aura around the morning after. Some smell like bacon, lilacs ready to bloom. Something just died inside that old sports bag. Your office mate tried a new fragrance at the drugstore over lunch. Some folks regularly dig into a fish named smelt. Stay stinky, I say. Deodorant is a collectivist trick. It's the flip of divide and conquer. I'd gag in a world where everybody used dial. I'd wish nobody did. Okay. Well, that's a lot of poetry. And I imagine by now, even with the Red Bull, getting Timex takes a licking and keeps on ticking. Does anyone even care that TikTok is spelled wrong? I like the sound of a ticking watch held near my ear. Shake to be sure it's still keeping time. Inside, intricacy, springs, sprockets, gears, levers, jewels, movements moving like tiny trapezes, tweezed into place with surgical precision by a sure-fingered Swiss, meticulous in the 5 a.m. morning till candlelight at night, before lithium was even a thing. Winding a watch is a delicacy. Tongue like a lizard's, licking it strictly to the top of the hour. Now, Switzerland has 4 official languages, yet no one speaks Swiss, but they can all tell time. And wristwatch licking is a national obsession. Now this is a product that no longer available in Canada, but I was able to access. Everything's better with blue bonnet on it. Morning breaks. Sparkle filter on a sun-kissed kitchen. Everything you need to start your day. Margarine. Spread so thick you can barely detect the toasted airiness of Wonder Bread underneath. Tall glass of tang. Fruit Loops with powdered milk in a blue and white bowl completes the scene, sets up a brush cut teen for a high caliber day. Mom smiles back. Shiny faced Jimmy eats up, smiles at aproned mom. She channels Donna Reed, June Cleaver, and Aunt Bee. Can't believe how quickly Jimmy's growing into his brother's old clothes, his father's feet. His country calls. Jimmy answers, gets helmet, rifle, tags, climbs into a C-130 transport, added to the casualty list just 3 weeks in. Along a glossy granite wall in Washington, D.C., she walks among thousands of Jimmys. Everything feels synthetic or broken, or both. She drops to her knees, slips a knife from her purse, and tries to scrape off his name. Thank you.
Want to learn more about the Single Onion? You can find us at singleonion.com. We've got an email list that you can sign up for, and once a month you'll get a little email about our upcoming events. We're also on Facebook and on Twitter. You can keep track of us that way. We want to give a big thanks to the League of Canadian Poets for supporting us, the Calgary Arts Development, Canada Council for the Arts, Writers Guild of Alberta, and especially Shelf Life Books for being our host for so many years. Really fantastic place. Our next event will be May 18th back here at Shelf Life. And I think that's all I have to say, but that feels shorter than normal. Maybe it'll come to me later. Okay. So our next poet is Moni Brar, and she was born in rural India and raised in northern British Columbia on the land of the Tse'Khene peoples. Hailing from a long lineage of subsistence farmers, she spends much of her time contemplating land, loss, language, and longing. Dominique Bernier-Cormier is a Québécois Acadian poet and translator. His first book, Correspondent, was longlisted for the Raymond Souster Award. He lives in Vancouver, where he writes and teaches in both English and French. His latest collection, Entre Rive and Shore, is a transliterative reimagining of one of Dominique's ancestors' escape from a British prison ahead of the Acadian expulsion, blending English and French. Dominique's work evokes the Acadian Chiac language. Entre Rive and Shore is an exhilarating collection that reassesses what it means to live between two identities, two worlds, and two languages. So please welcome Dominique.
Hey everyone, how's the sound? Is this okay?
Yeah.
Okay, it sounds like I'm just talking and there's no mic, but I'm gonna trust you. Okay. Thank you for being here. David, thank you. Thank you, Single Onion. Thank you to Shelf Life Books. This is an amazing bookstore. You guys are so lucky. This is awesome. It's my first time in Calgary, actually. And I just came from the airport. So far, 10 out of 10. I had a great taxi driver. We talked about Pakistani poetry. And then this bookstore is amazing. You guys are awesome. So Calgary so far, amazing. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to read from my second book of poetry. It's called Entre Rive and Shore. And yeah, the noticers in the crowd will have noticed that it's in the title is in two languages. Entre Rive and Shore, meaning entre rive et rive, or between shore and shore. It's in French and English. The book itself is in French and English and sort of in between French and English. So there's poems in French, poems in English. Sorry, just 15 minutes. Some poems that are in a sort of blend, my own blend of French and English, and there's also a lot of translation work. Yeah, like David said before, I sort of dive into it, I sort of have to give you a bit of historical context. And I'm going to do the same thing as you. Who here is familiar with the Acadian deportation or expulsion? Okay. For those of you that aren't, essentially, in 1755, the British who had taken over control of Acadia or Mi'kma'ki from the French sort of looked around and were like, there's a lot of French people in here. We should do something about that. And they separated families, put them on boats, and deported them to the British colonies of the Carolinas, Georgia, Virginia, Massachusetts, and so forth. And it's a sort of defining moment for Acadian identity and Acadian culture. And I've always kind of wanted to write about that because my dad always told me a story about our family and sort of why we didn't end up in Virginia or Georgia and why we managed to stay in Acadia and sort of avoid the deportation. And so I'm going to tell you the family legend. And we're not sure if this is true. I mean, it's true in the way that things are true that are meaningful to you and that kind of stuff. Is it historically accurate and factual? Who knows? They didn't keep great records back then. But my ancestor, Pierrot Cormier, in 1755 was 22 years old at the time and was living in Acadia. And he got captured, by the British and put in jail at Fort Beauséjour. And the family legend goes that the night before the deportation, his wife was allowed to visit him in jail and smuggled in, presumably in some sort of cartoonish picnic basket, smuggled into the jail a second set of women's clothing, so a dress and a bonnet and all that stuff. And my ancestor Pierrot just put on the dress and walked out of jail. And my dad always told me that that's why we speak French and we're from New Brunswick instead of speaking English and sort of being from Louisiana or the American South. So what does that have to do with bilingualism and translation and my identity? Well, I always felt like that story had something to tell me about the space between languages and about wearing a second language as a disguise and moving in those spaces. But I wasn't quite sure what that story had to tell me about speaking French, speaking English, and about those conflicts. And so I decided to sort of explore my bilingual identity through writing about that story, that legend. Okay, so now you're kind of situated. So I'm going to read you a couple of prose pieces to start with, actually, that kind of explain the relationship between bilingualism and the story of Pierrot Cormier, that family legend. And I don't know if you can see you probably won't be able to see online, but the people in the crowd, I don't know if you can see on the left. So I did a lot of sort of visual experiments with the poems. And this is the first one. You can see there's a sort of cleaving or rift in the middle. That was meant to say that bilingual identity is sort of like you're kind of split in half. Okay. For a long time, I experienced bilingualism as a rift within myself. To live in two languages is to constantly translate yourself, and translation is an inherently violent process, a forceful cleaving of meaning from words, a ripping of sense from its home. In this way, Pierrot's imprisonment in August of 1755 was also a translation into the jail of English, maison into fire, ciel into cell, ripping the black bars of sounds he couldn't pronounce, the syntax of his home burning in the night. But if his jailing was a translation, his escape must be a translation as well, back towards his home language. Meanings freed for a moment from the shackles of words, running through a field of moonlight, fantôme without shells, liberated. A hallway only half lit by torches, Pierrot, remembering how the word lune glowed dans le ciel, le mot rosé sous ses pieds. I love the timid clapping at poetry readings. Fully clap, or we can be silent. Okay. Either works. I get it. Okay, I'm going to give you a choice now, sort of in between reading from a poem set in Louisiana or a poem set in New Brunswick. So who would like to hear a poem set in Louisiana? Raise your hand, please. Louisiana or New Brunswick? Big time Louisiana fan over here. Okay, and New Brunswick? More New Brunswick, okay. So the fort that my ancestor escaped from is called Fort Beauséjour, and it still sort of stands today. The ruins are still there, and it's now become a Parks Canada sort of monument, and you can go visit the fort. And so I went and I visited the fort, and you can actually go into the barracks where he's currently escaped from, and I did that. And you can even, this is a weird thing that Parks Canada does, but you can spend a night in the fort, like inside the ruins. You can camp. They rent you like this old school canvas tent from the 18th century and stuff. And I wasn't actually able to do that, but I wrote a poem about it anyways, about doing it. That's, you can kind of, yeah, you can do whatever you want in poetry. It's called Fugitive Chic. Now, it's a long poem. I'm going to read you a few extracts. Like someone long dead or not born yet, the cold voice of the GPS leads me straight to what remains of the star-shaped fort, a déjà vu 263 Augusts in the making. At the reception desk, the teenager pinned to his own polo shirt by a bronze name tag says, "Bonjour, hi," then asks me why I'm here. I want to say, to check if I've inherited the fugitive gene, if I can wear dusk right off the rack. Camping, I say. He makes me sign my name in a book and download an app that asks me which language I prefer, as if it works like that and not the other way around, as if I don't wake up every morning afraid que mon français se soit évadé. Swaying curtains, an open window, and a note left on the pillow. Before heading into the ruins, I ruffle through period clothes for a disguise, dig through bins of language drenched in 300-year-old sunlight, picking words to escape in. Colline, mouchoir de cou, petit corps, mantelet, besace. Also, a sleeping pad, a hand crank radio, and a lantern, its plastic flame frozen in time. Outside, I open the app and point it at the landscape. On the screen, cars vanish from the parking lot and ramparts sprout from the grass, pixel by pixel, translating the present into the past. In the tent, I step into my skirt, lace the ribbons of a falsetto around my chin. Comment je me sens? Fugitive chic, like an oil painting of a dead forest over which a bright city was built. Sunset now, and the canvas walls glow like the webbed skin between fingers. A stiletto slip, and through it, voices in a language I can't pin down. On the radio, physicists in California claim to be the first to cut a hole in the fabric of time. But earlier, I stuck my face into the faceless silhouette of an Acadian peasant. How did it feel? Like lacing the ribbons of an old voice around my chin. Did I say that already? Excuse me, I'm losing all sense of century. I'm going to start throwing in a bit more French now, so hold on to your seats. Let's start, yeah. I slip into my future light sleeping bag and dream of a woman unfolding a bundle of fabric, a palme de lune neatly the way a cell duplicates encore et encore until a skin of silk in silhouette. Je rêve d'un champ of blue photons growing across my face, d'une main smuggling my trembling fear like a clear jar of moonshine out of my chest. When I wake up, I can't remember dans quelle langue j'ai rêvé. The meanings still hold, not split by the lightning of language yet. I drift in and out of sleep for a while, a relief from speech, half awake dans les ruines du sommeil. David, I have no idea for how long I've been going.
I haven't really been telling you. Keep going.
I won't be too much longer. Okay. So while I was writing this book, I was sort of looking for, the whole book is sort of a record of me looking for a metaphor for living between two languages. And the book's sort of the title metaphor is that translation is a passage from one shore, the shore of one language to the shore of another language, right? And so that often being bilingual and being stuck in between two languages or moving from one language to another, you're often in that sort of turbulent waters in between. And I explore sort of other metaphors for living bilingually and writing bilingually in the book. And I don't think I found the perfect metaphor for it until a couple of weeks ago, actually. And it was way too late because the book had been printed and everything. But I think I finally found the perfect metaphor for writing bilingually and living bilingually. And I don't know if you remember this, but about 10 years ago, maybe, there was an ad, an ad. And it was an ad for Volvo trucks, like big highway trucks. And it was Jean-Claude Van Damme. Okay, Jean-Claude Van Damme. And it opened with just a shot of his face. And he was so serene. Right? And then it panned away and down. And it turns out he was doing the splits between two trucks, like speeding down the highway. Yeah, and that's what being bilingual is. It's sort of doing the splits between two languages. But the trick is that, and that's sort of what writing bilingual poems felt like. It really felt like a split and like a precarious balance between the two languages. And I hope I am as graceful as Jean-Claude Van Damme when I do it. But that's the trick. You have to write poems that do acrobatic things, but look serene doing it. I think. So I'm going to read you a couple of fully bilingual poems. Okay. The bayou is an armurerie d'argile, where blades of sun aiguise leur feu. Each night, j'attache un ruban de soie around my mâchoire and surrender, and listen to the soft slang de mon sang, whispering in my veins, the sweet nothings que dusk me chuchote à l'oreille. Comme je disais, the important thing, c'est savoir se fendre le cerveau in half et de continuer à parler devant une foule of light, even ébloui, even aveuglé. Même quand the vase of the moon se fracasse dans le ciel et que la mer, again, comme un orfèvre, must fix it and all its little pieces. Les phrases qui poussent in my head ne fleurissent plus qu'à tenir. Les fissures, the cold floor dont mes genoux rêvent encore. Les plus belles traductions, like dreams, sont celles that don't make sense. Fenêtre, to be born on fire. Paupières, the skin of stone. 31 years now que j'essaie d'être né on both sides d'une seule rivière. And that's it for me. Thank you so much, everyone.
And thank you to all four of our poets this evening. That was really fantastic. Shelf Life has a bunch of copies of his book at the counter. And thanks to everyone joining us online and joining us in person. This is awesome. And we'll be back in May. What did I say? May 18th. There you go. 18. All right, everyone. Have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you.